Oh no, something bad has happened. Disaster. Whose fault is it? Who can we blame? Who can we blame? You probably want to avoid that, and I'll show you how right after this. Hey, it's me, Fred Moore, time management expert and bald guy. It says so right there, so it must be true, right? Who's to blame? Who's to blame for my haircut? I blame being married and having two daughters. That's why I have no hair. Mostly the daughters. The marriage is great. The daughters drive me crazy in a good way. Anyway, good to see you, Fred Moore here. Before we go any further, you know the drill. Hit the like button, comment on this, share this video with your friends. Help them to avoid the blame game, because that's what we're talking about today. Avoiding the blame game. There you go. Hey, good thing I have that there, because I don't know who to blame. It happens all the time, right? Something happens in the company, in your life, in your business, whatever. Disaster strikes. Dun, dun, dun. And what do? What do you do? The first thing that most people do, the very first thing that they do is, whose fault is it? Whose fault? Whose fault? Who's responsible for this? I know a guy, his job is to come in and help people deal with disasters. Not FEMA, not that kind of thing. No, like companies. Like, the CEO gets caught in a scandal. Disaster. Product needs to be recalled. Disaster. Somebody embezzles them. Disaster. Just, it's a bad thing. Something, he's a fixer. His job is to come in and help fix the problem. And the first thing that he does every single time when he comes into the meeting with everybody there, the first thing he hears from everybody is, whose fault is it? They're trying to figure out whose fault it is, who to blame, right? Because most of the time they don't want it falling on that. It's not my fault, it's his fault. Well, yeah, but if you hadn't done this, then, oh yeah, you didn't. That's why they bring this guy in. Because most companies, they can't fix the problem when they're focused on whose fault it is. So they bring in this guy. And this guy's like, shut up. I don't care whose fault it is. I'm here to fix the problem. That's what people tend to focus on. When something happens, you're chugging along, you're going after your goals, your business is going great, and something happens, and boom, the first thing that most people do is like, oh, why did this happen? Who did this? Who is responsible for this? I got to tell you, 90% of the time, the person that's responsible for the problem is you. I know, I'm sorry, tough love, right? I say, look in the mirror. No, it's probably you. Now, I'm not saying that you actually did this, somebody else may have done the thing that is causing the problem. Well, maybe you weren't there to supervise. Maybe you didn't give them instruction enough. Maybe ultimately the responsibility falls on you. You're in charge. Now maybe you're not in charge. Maybe you're not the boss. Maybe you have a job, a regular job. You're working for somebody, and something happens, and the boss comes, it's your fault. Who to blame? Who to blame? All right. An easy way to avoid that situation is, don't worry about whose fault it is right now. No, solve the problem. That's what you need to focus on. Solve the problem. Not whose fault it is, who did it, why did it. No, solve the problem. There's an old movie, man, I can't remember. I need to look it up on Internet Movie Database. It's Michael Douglas, and Demi Moore was in it, and he's coming into this company, and she's trying to frame him, and she's trying to take over the company, and somebody put it in the comments what the movie is. You know what I'm talking about. You go ahead and Google it now while I'm babbling on. But he's getting some help from somebody. He doesn't know who it is. Somebody keeps messaging him, and what they basically keep saying is, solve the problem. Solve the problem. See, there was a problem that's going on, and they were using this to distract from that problem, right? This person was like, no, don't worry about that. Look at this guy. Blame him. Blame him. They were avoiding the problem. Solve the problem. Solve the problem, and then all this stuff, you can figure that out later, whose fault it is. Solve the problem. many years ago, I was working a touring show. I've told this story before, maybe you know it. But basically what happened, I was working in the show, and they canceled my contract. They fired me is what they did. They fired me through no fault of my own. And that's, I know everyone who gets fired is, it wasn't my fault. No, I was not the right fit for the job. I was too, it was all these 20-something people. I was too old. I was just, no, it wasn't the right fit. And I knew it. But they said, we want you, and here's some money. So I said, okay. So anyway, well, I got fired. And I had a choice, all right? I could sit there and blame somebody. Well, that's, you know, that's, how dare they do that? That's not right. Just because I'm too old for this, just because I don't fit in with this show, just because it's I look weird on stage compared to all these people. Just, that's not my fault. Well, yeah, it kind of sort of is. I didn't focus on the problem. I didn't focus on whose fault it was. I focused on how to solve my problem. I had a 9-month contract that was suddenly taken away from me, vanished from sight. How ironic, or a magic guy to have that happen to, right? It vanished. So now the problem I had was I had no income. I had nothing on the books because I had a contract for 9 months. Now I had nothing. So I needed to solve the problem. The problem was I needed gigs. So I needed gigs, not just a gig. A really good gig. I had to find out people that needed me. I had to find people that had a problem I could solve. They needed some entertainment. They needed a speaker. They needed consulting. They needed some time management training, whatever. I needed to solve my problem. That was my immediate priority, solve the problem. Once I got things going, that's when I looked at, all right, well, what's the next step? How can I prevent this from happening? All right. How to prevent it from happening in the first place. That way you don't have to worry about who to blame, right? Maybe the person that did this thing is a big screw up. How to prevent it from happening? Fire them. I got fired. They solved their problem. This guy does not fit in our show. Let's replace him with somebody else. And that's how I learned to prevent it. I can now prevent that same problem from happening to me. Nobody is ever going to fire me from a show. Because if they hire me as their speaker, if they hire me as their consultant, if they hire me as their entertainment for the evening, because I still do that, they can't replace me because there's only one me. I've made it a point to be as unique as I possibly. It's me they're buying. They're not buying a magician. They're not buying a speaker. They're not buying a trainer. They are buying Fred Moore and what he does. Speaking of myself in the third person because that's so important. No, I made myself irreplaceable. Irreplaceable, unique enough so that, hey, if they're buying me, they're only buying me and they can't get me anyplace else. So yes, avoid the blame game. Problem comes up, don't worry about who did it, why it happened. Solve the problem, then go back and figure out why did this happen and what can we do to prevent it from happening again. There you go. Easy peasy. That'll save you a whole lot of time in your life, won't it? Speaking of time, check out 5hoursback.com if you want to get 5 hours back in your week. Video PDF, going to teach you how to do exactly that. Simple, easy things you can do to get back some of that precious time that you have in your life and use it to have fun, get more business, sleep, binge, whatever you want to do, you'll be able to do so much more. See you next time.